got you. All right, are we ready to roll? I'm ready to roll. Go ahead and bring it up. We'll bring up the news feed now. All right. So Jared just brought up the YouTube feed, and so we are ready to go. I'd like to welcome everyone to this special meeting of the Mahomet-Seymour Board of Education. It is 7:01 p.m. on Monday, February 22nd. At this time, I'd like to remind everyone attending in person to please sign in and silence your cell phones. I'd like to remind our visitors that in order to facilitate an effective meeting, we ask those who'd like to make comments to read the visitor guidelines, which are the table outside the door. Complete the attached public participation form and get those to Dawn. Okay? Can we have roll call, please?
Giles.
Here.
Keith.
Here.
Hendricks.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
Larson. Here. Hennessy.
I'm here.
McComb.
Here. Let's stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, board members, you've had a chance to review the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Larson.
Discussion on the agenda.
I just want to say
Roll call.
that I will
ahead,
not be
Cal.
voting yes. Sorry. I will not be voting yes on the agenda because we as a board had made an agreement on how items could be placed on the agenda, and a request for topics to be discussed at this meeting was made that met the conditions of that agreement, but those items are not on the agenda. And normally we could have asked to have a discussion item added because we have policy 2220, which tells us that discussion items can be added at the beginning of an agenda of a regular meeting, and items not on the agenda could still be discussed. But because this has been designated as a special meeting, there's not an opportunity to add discussion items or to discuss items not on the agenda. And so while I completely understand that our ability to make changes is prohibited, if you ask me if I agree with the agenda, I'm not going to be able to say yes.
Is there anyone else with anything to say as far as discussion on the agenda? Okay, Dawn, vote please.
Larson. Yes. Hendricks.
Yes.
Giles.
Yes.
Hennessy.
No.
Keith.
Yes.
Schultz.
Present.
McComb.
Yes. Okay. Is there anything as far as public participation forums? Okay. I also want to point out, Shelley Anderson from Frantic is with us tonight. I asked her to join us, and she is here at my request in case we have questions or issues that we need the guidance with. Consent agenda. You've had a chance to review the consent agenda. It's got minutes of previous meetings. It's got monthly bills, the treasurer's report, personnel changes, a date and time set for high school graduation, and press policy 106. Does anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda for individual discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as it's presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, discussion? Roll call
I
vote,
need
please.
to, sorry.
Go ahead, Kyle.
I need to object once again to the press policies being placed in the consent agenda without having a first reading of the policies from a previous meeting. We have rules and policies that our board voted to implement, which serve purposes of knowing how we operate as a board in a district. And if we routinely and regularly violate those rules, that creates conflict and discord. In this case, policy 2240 says policies and policy revisions will not be adopted at the board meeting in which they're first introduced. And in the case of the policies we have in front of us today, they're not very controversial. And I know there's likely to be a temptation to simply vote them through without multiple readings or even any discussion. And no one is really likely to object in this case. And I know that people will say it could be legalistic or picky to even mention a 2 reading policy, but I would disagree. Not only is there really no excuse for not keeping our word as to how we said we would operate, but in this case, I think we need to consider the reason we voted this policy through in the first place. Policy is how the board directs the district, and the policy that we have voted to implement creates a mechanism that allows members of the community to have a voice in discussions about the direction that the district is moving. And while the policies on the consent agenda today don't draw a public outcry, I think we need to think about what press policies are and how we would want all the press policies to be implemented. Press policies deal with, typically, mostly with laws that are passed at the state level. And a lobbying organization made up of folks that aren't in Mahomet-Seymour interpret those laws and then pass them on to us as recommended policy. And someday, and maybe even someday soon, there's going to be laws that the community might want to have input into the interpretation of. And if we have the practice of just passing these policies through the consent agenda with no discussion and the first meeting that they've been presented, then the opportunity for the community to participate will be thwarted. And I think that's why our policy goes on to say further board consideration will be given at a subsequent meeting and after opportunity for community input. And so I believe we should keep our word about how we said we would operate and make sure that we have practices in place that will protect and allow for proper community engagement.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Anyone else? Okay, can we roll call vote, please?
Hennessy,
No?
Schultz,
No.
Keith,
No.
Giles,
I agree with what was just said, so I'd agree to pull that out. So I'll say no.
Okay, so the consent agenda has failed, so we'll go back to the beginning again. Is there a motion to remove part of the consent agenda for individual discussion? Seems to me there is. I asked before, and everyone said no, but it seems to me like press 106 is a problem. So I would suggest we remove it. But I need someone to say that, or else we're just gonna sit here and vote down like the consent agenda again. So would we like to remove press 106 is my question from the consent agenda?
Yes, let's remove press 106.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so press 106 is removed from consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda without press 106?
I believe we have to go through the making a motion to remove that and vote on it.
That's not how we've done it before.
I don't think we have to make a motion on that, but I think we should finish the motion from before it's turned down.
Well, we had 4 no votes, it was turned down. I'm sorry. You can go ahead and finish the vote, Don.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Larson. Yes. McComb.
No. Okay, now. So we'll go back then. Would any board members like to remove anything from the consent agenda for further discussion or individual discussion?
I move to remove the press policies from the consent agenda.
Okay, all right. So is there anything else we'd like to remove? Okay, so the motion is to approve the consent agenda without press policies 106. Is there a motion to do that?
Hennessy made a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second the removal.
All right. Further discussion? We have a vote, please.
Hendricks,
No.
Hennessy,
No? We're voting on the
Schultz?
consent agenda, correct? I need some clarification
Yeah,
on what
we're
we're voting on,
the
please.
consent agenda. We're voting on the consent agenda without press 106.
No,
We're voting on the consent agenda, or we're voting on removing the consent?
We're voting on the consent agenda without press 106. I'm
Well,
sorry.
that's just my mistake. I thought we were.
No.
Okay. Well, I would.
The way the consent agenda works is any board member can object to a part of it and have it removed.
Right.
So we don't need to vote on it.
I'm so confused.
Let's clean that up and talk about what we're.
Okay, so we're voting on the consent agenda, we're voting on the minutes, the bills, the treasurer's report, the personnel changes, and the graduation.
Okay.
Not press 106.
Can you ask for my vote again?
Hendricks,
Yes.
Hennessy,
no,
Schultz,
No,
Larson,
Yes,
Giles,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. Okay, now we have press 106 to deal with. I would recommend that we treat tonight as the first reading and put it on the agenda for next month. Does that sound acceptable?
yes.
I guess the question I have is, these are updates. They're not actually new policies, right?
correct.
There are revisions to some.
Right.
I think there's a
Oh,
revision
So it's not-
that
It's not
adds,
technically a new policy.
Right.
I'm sorry?
It's not a new policy.
Our policy that we implemented says policy or policy revisions will not be adopted at the board meeting in which they're first introduced.
Okay.
I understand. Like I sort of said before, I don't have any objection to these particular policies.
Right.
I just think it's bad practice to not follow our rule because at some point there's going to be a policy someone's going to care about. And I just feel that there's a good reason we have this policy and we should try to keep it.
I have a question. We have had previous updates and have voted them in.
Yes.
Yes,
So
okay,
I-
so that's where I'm confused. My understanding, just so you know, was that I thought if we had new policies, we had a first read at a meeting and then we voted on them. We have previously taken things that have come from press, PRESS, the service, and adopted them. So that's why there's such a discrepancy here, because they're two different issues. That's just a point of,
So in point of fact, we, since I've been on the board, we started with Press 100. For Press 100, we adopted it. We had a discussion and then an adoption. For Press 101, we had a discussion and then an adoption. For Press 103, we had a discussion and then an adoption. Actually, sorry, 102, 101 and 102. 103 and 104 were adopted in August, and I raised the same concern in August in the meeting and said that this was against our policies and we shouldn't do it, and the board chose to vote it through anyway. So I have raised it before when we did this, and before then, the past practice was not to adopt them through on the same meeting they came up.
so there's just a contrary between what the school board governance basis is too, because it says the board delegates authority, and it delegates in number 4, the authority to means empowering the superintendent and staff to pursue board ends single-mindedly and without hesitation. So see, there's just not an alignment there. So I'm sure that's why there's some confusion.
I'm sorry, can you read that again? I didn't hear you, Lori.
Okay, so from the ISB, I bring these every meeting, and in the school board governance basics in number 4, the board delegates authority, and it says in bullet 2, the delegates authority to means empowering the superintendent and staff to pursue board ends single-mindedly and without hesitation. The board delegates authority to the superintendent to manage the district and provide leadership. Such authority is communicated through policy. So I'm sure that's why there's a discrepancy. It's good to get it on the same page.
But I do believe that governance is applicable and and what we want to do. We certainly want to give Lindsay and the administrators the ability to just act in the best interest of the district and to follow policy, but that's different than us enacting policy. That point that you read doesn't actually have anything to do with the board creating policy. That's about the district administrating policy.
There's a difference of opinion here, obviously, but it's fine.
I would recommend that we
Me
treat
too.
tonight as the first reading and move it to the next agenda. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on that? Vote please.
Schultz,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes, all right, we're at donations. Dr. Hall.
We have just one donation this evening from an anonymous donor to the Mahomet-Seymour Junior High Volleyball Program, a donation of $2,268. Thank you to that donor.
Wow.
Appreciate the generosity.
That is outstanding. We appreciate that anonymous person. Is there a motion to approve the donations as presented?
So moved.
So moved, Larson.
Was there somebody on webcast?
I said so moved, but that's fine.
Would you like to be the second?
Sure.
All right, so we've got a motion and a second to approve the donations. Is there further discussion? We vote, please.
Keith,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. All right, it's communication time. Is there anyone here from the PTO tonight? From the MSEA? Lori, is there anything from the foundation?
Yes, several things. Okay, due to things going on, we'll start with the things that are sad. The bash will be canceled this year. The Hall of Fame will be postponed from April to a later date. That was originally going to be in the fall when we had our homecoming. However, the grants committee will be meeting at the end of March because we had a successful fundraiser through our capital campaign at the end of the year. And we will be giving out grants. So they'll find out sometime probably the 1st of April. They will be a lesser amount because we had less collection, but on the positive note, we still will be doing grants through the foundation.
Good. Any thoughts on what they're gonna do with Hall of Fame?
I do not know that.
Yeah,
We have our first committee meeting coming up as a whole committee next month. So I think
it's hard right now.
we'll talk about it then.
Shifting. All right, do we have anything from visitors, Dawn?
No.
Okay. So moving on, time for communication from board members. We'll start with Dr. Hendricks.
Nothing to report.
Ms. Larson.
I really appreciate the reports on the academic performance and difficulties that we've had during the time. As an educator, I enjoy reading that. I appreciated seeing the update on the things that they're doing through the historical preferences that have happened in the world through these years. I love the positive behavior reports, and I'd like to thank Jama, Addie, Jim, and Jennifer for co-chairing the community engagement facilitating team. It's exciting to see community members step into the process that we have moving forward, and I'm grateful to them for their time and service.
All right. Ken, do you have anything tonight?
I have no report. Thank you.
Colleen? Colleen, you still there?
It looks to me like she could be having internet issues. She's got a warning sign on her, so I don't know what that means.
We have Jared with us still or no?
Yeah, she's.
Oh, there you are. Hi, Jared.
She's still there.
She's still there, she's just not.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't have any answer for you. Good.
Colleen, can you hear me?
Reconnecting.
She's reconnecting? Okay. So we'll give her a minute. Colleen, are you back? No.
Can we move on?
Yep.
I just
Megan,
text, yeah, I just texted her, so maybe she'll get back to me that way. But in the
Okay.
meantime, sure, I'm happy to go. I just wanted to mention that the United Way of Illinois has kicked off an equity challenge, and it's a 21-week program for the express purposes of people diving into topics about equity and inclusion. And there's currently started week 6. And I just wanted to mention it because if people are interested in navigating these topics and having some more information, this seems to be a very nice program that's designed to prompt you on every Monday with challenges for the week. And they might include quizzes or videos that you can watch or readings that you can read. And I've just found that it's been a very nice project to be a part of. And I know that we've had discussion about this subject in our community. So I just wanted to share that for those people who may not know, be aware of it, that you can just go to the United Way of Illinois and look up Equity Challenge, and you can sign up for that program and for 21 weeks. And if you've missed the previous 6 weeks, we're 6 weeks in. It's organized so that it's pretty easy to catch up, and a lot of these activities really take 10 or 15 minutes. So I just wanted to share that with the community based on some of the discussions we've had previously.
Thank you for sharing.
She back? Colleen, you back?
Her audio is not reconnected.
All right, Merle.
Thank you, Max. I would like to share some observations tonight about recent board member behavior that seems to have gone off the rails. Behavior that I observe to be premeditated, coordinated, and sufficiently egregious to merit public censure. Those who watched the public portion of the February 1 meeting know this. We had an agenda that was as simple as it gets. Roll call, the pledge, public comment, and a single-purpose closed session. There was a request and ultimately a motion to discuss publicly the process to be used in the closed session. Many of you know that closed sessions occur for very good reasons, to keep some discussions private. So it is eminently logical to expect that discussion of a process related to a closed session might reveal aspects of the very content that is intended to be private. The motion to discuss process publicly failed 4-3, at which time the 3 who voted no peppered the board president with questions about the process anyway. This happened regardless of the fact that the board president had explicit legal opinion that processes related to a closed session topic are themselves an allowable closed session topic. During this rather emotional exchange, references were made to the purpose of the closed session itself, thereby violating the privacy of the individuals involved, and importantly, resulting in 3 board members violating the Open Meetings Act in an intentional manner that supports my observation of premeditation, coordination, and egregious behavior. Put more plainly, this was bullying such as we would never tolerate in our classrooms. Indeed, I view this behavior as a coordinated moment made for TV, especially when considering the paucity of human and relational input that followed. But of course, I'm not allowed to talk about that. For the record, I am not rerunning for a board seat this year. But I will posit that all school boards face more difficulties now than ever before. I do not say this because of the seemingly routine emotional conflict among our members, but because of a significant spike in uncertainty with running the business of education. Uncertainty with finances, staffing, safety, and strategy. Curriculum and educational pedagogy seem simpler by comparison. Therefore, an honest, apolitical assessment of board governance might be helpful. George Will, a native of Champaign, said in a News Gazette article, what I will paraphrase. The COVID-19 tragedy teaches us two things. One, that government is more apt to achieve adequacy when it does not try to achieve purity. And two, success often departs from overly prescriptive rules. In other words, legislating behavior and implementation results in paralysis because discussing issues of such high complexity and uncertainty rarely fit into the cadence of board meetings. Developing a plan before taking any action risks that we stipulate one correct way to achieve goals, when it is observably true that this purges human choices from public choices. Eliminating human agency from the implementation of public decisions is today's nightmare. I concur with George Will that a quest to achieve governance that is better than people advances a bureaucracy that becomes preoccupied with avoiding error without pausing to consider its inability to achieve success. Dr. Hall called this out very directly a few months ago when she responded to pressure to reverse a call to get all students back to school in January, saying it's too early now to call for a snow day in January. I suggest that we refrain from governance that preempts active intelligence on the ground. Let's drop the anti-establishment charade and embrace human response to ambiguity so we are not tempted as board members to vote present as an escape. We as a community cannot afford to fail to act on ground level intelligence. Furthermore, I suggest that each of us as board members should be having a ready answer to questions from the public as to when we last set foot in the superintendent's office or even our own boardroom to seek out the subtleties of human communication on the ground. Let's put ourselves in a position to learn through uncertainty. Our constituents demand it, and as we prepare for the ballot box, let's know what we stand for. I stand for a better balance of humans over process, relationships over rules. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Carl.
Colleen, are you back?
I just was able to call in because I cannot connect. I don't know why, but I am back.
Okay. And do you have anything to share tonight during board comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. And then I will pass tonight. So we're to the financial update. Heather.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Hall. I would just let you all receive the red flag report and the financial information. We are running steady with our budget on revenues and expenses, which is a good sign so far in the operational funds. So we are today, as of January 31st, at 85 days of cash on hand, which brings me to another subject. I've been getting a lot of calls, emails, and you know what, I really appreciate them because people are seeking for information. And I really do encourage anybody that has any questions about the financials to call me, anytime. I am readily available because there's been some information that people have questioned and some of it for good reason. First of all, I'd like to state we do not have a huge deficit in our budget. We do, but it is in non-operational funds. What that means is we got money back in 1920 for the field house. We got over $1 million in bonds. When those bonds are going to be paid out is the next year. So in that non-operational fund, there was a surplus. It's called the Capital Projects Fund. The next year, it goes out of that fund. It's not a true deficit because it's going in and out for the reason that we got the bonds. For operational purposes, we did have a $100,000 deficit, but that deficit was due to the fact that we made a lot of conservative rationale for this budget. Why did I do that? Because we were going through COVID. And one of the things that I was encouraged to do was to assume worst case scenario on sales tax. We estimated a 20% decrease in sales tax, meaning that we would have to pull out of our working cash. We are at 6%. I am in great hopes that we will not have any deficit at all in our operational funds. I would like to go back to 1819 when we were in financial watch. First of all, that was 1819. And yes, 1819 is what is last out on ISBs, but I would encourage anybody that wants to, if they could go into my audit that is on our district webpage, because that has our new financial score. And it also has our days cash on hand, which I'd like to talk about days cash on hand a little bit. Days cash on hand is just one piece of the puzzle. It is an ever-changing amount. You will see back in 1819, it has been repeated that we currently have 40 days of cash on hand. We do not have 40 days of cash on hand. We did in 1819. Why? Because normally in a year, we get the previous year levy, half of the previous year levy, and half of the current year levy. Well, in 1819, they had some issues at the treasurer's office, and we only got half of the half. So we ended up getting shorted $4 million in 1819, which is what put us into that financial category. What happened then is we got the other $4 million in 1920. Again, at the end of 1920, we were still shorted that $4 million. But because we got the previous year's $4 million, we ended up in financial review. And somebody asked, well, is that financial review a outcome of getting that extra money? No, we have not seen the other side of that yet. Because, for example, we have a new treasurer, and we've been told that she's going to go back to giving us half of our money at the end of the year and the beginning of the year. If that comes true, then we would get $8 million at the end of this year instead of the $4 million that I planned. I did not plan for that $8 million because we didn't get it last year, and I didn't want to plan again and assume it without. So we could see the reverse of that in any year when that gets back on track. But even without that $4 million, we are at a 3.25, which is financial review. At the end of the school year, we had, like I said, days cash on hand changes very frequently. We had, I believe, 54 days at the end of the year. We currently have 85 days. I would like to state the district I previously worked at, we had 35 million in reserves, which was half of our annual budget, and we still did not meet the highest rank 4 days cash on hand. It is a target, but it is a very high target. There are not that many districts that at the end of the year make that target after they've paid off payroll and everything else. Everything is a target. We are doing good. Right now we have, but I do want to point out, we are at the mercy of the state. The state has identified that we are only at 65% adequacy. That means that the state even knows we don't have 100% of what we need to fund our students. So in the fact that normally in a normal year, we get tier money to try to get that adequacy up every year, we did not get any tier money for 2021. that would be around 500,000 because we are still in tier 1, which means that we are one of the highest. We are one of the people that get the least money. You know, we are the lowest level basically for that. So they need to make it up somehow eventually, and that's the idea of the model. But we did not get it last year or this year, so that's a 500,000. They are saying you're not going to get it for next year, so that doubles that because once you get the tier money, it becomes part of your base funding minimum. So next year, we're basically going to be missing another $1 million. They're saying, well, you'll make it up with your federal money. The federal money, and I'm going to go to a webinar because they have announced that they're moving forward with that second ESSER allocation. But the problem is, and this is why I want to go, is that a lot of times that money cannot be spent on certain things. So it's not going to just replace that state money. That's why, you know, I will be looking forward toward taking things into that grant that we would already be paying for or we already need, not the extraordinary unless we have anything left over for that. For example, our regular refresher Chromebooks. And then, as you'll see next month, probably we need some more teacher devices. So things like that that we normally have to pay for so that we can relieve some of that burden on our operations. But I just want to say, you know, we do not receive, being from a district that received a lot of state money, we do not receive that much state money. And it's kind of funny when you sit in your seat, you're like, why not? But we don't get a pre-K grant. We don't get as much in title. What I want to say is, you know, things have been done very well here to offer the kind of education that Mahomet offers at a 65% adequacy level and not to raise the tax rate at this point and to be where we are. So yes, you know, my goal overall in this position eventually, hopefully, once we get adequately refunded and once we get all the staffing we need to be adequately funded, because that's the other thing. It's always based on the previous year's enrollment. So if you think about how Mahomet's continuing to grow, and that's why we keep getting stuck in tier 1, which we want to be at that point to continue getting more money, but as we continue to grow, our funding has not caught up with our growth either. So eventually, yeah, it will be good to have more on hand, and we can also think of some other things, but I just want to say, you know, Dr. Hall has directed me to be very transparent. So I would love for anybody to call me, email me, anything. Contact me at any time if you want to know anything about the district finances. So.
Thank you, Heather.
Questions for Heather?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Heather, that's a great explanation. So it sounds like this is a little bit of a shell game by the state. It used to be that they would short pay their normal payments. Now they're just short paying their extraordinary payments.
Yes, and I do expect too that they could also short their categorical payments. Those are payments that we get, and that's the other thing. Somebody else asked me, well, it says at the bottom of the financial profile that ISB could change it. ISB, the only way that ISB will change the financial profile score from what the auditors submit is if there are delayed payments, they will sometimes do an adjusted score. So it's only going to go up, is basically what I'm going to say. So our auditor score is our score unless they consider some delayed payments. So, but yes, they can. I can see them doing that. Not to mention the fact that with COVID, our transportation claim went down because our special ed mileage went down. So then it moves it to non-reimbursable. So we will see some effects of that too. And that's what I'd like to learn in this webinar for the ESSER is what I can apply to it and what I can't. Because as we know, in school finance, it's a lot different than regular. And there are only certain things you can pay out of certain buckets.
Thanks for handling that complexity.
Any other questions?
Heather, I have a question if you don't mind.
Sure.
The governor just announced that we really should expect to see funding just at the base level. So
Yes.
what does that really mean for us in terms of next year?
Okay, that's what I was talking about with the base funding minimum. So we will continue to get that base funding minimum, but like this year, we should have gotten 500,000. Okay, extra for tier money because we're in tier 1. Next year, if we do not get it again, that would be another 500,000 plus the 500,000 we get that year. So basically, you know, I can't say we lost it because we never had it, but we didn't get 1.5 million between this year and next year that we should have got if we were running under normal circumstances. So,
But Heather, to be clear, you do not have those payments in our budget today.
no, I do not.
Okay.
No, I did not. You'll find I'm very conservative when it comes to that. That's why I did not include that extra 4 million either, because I did not want to expect that we would get on a regular schedule with the treasurer's office.
Sounds like the pension system.
It's nice to get on the regular schedule with the treasurer.
It would be nice. I think she's really working towards it, but I don't say it's here until it's here. You know, I see it in the bank.
They can't explain how we got off of it, they can't explain where our money's been. Guess we'll see. Any other
I have a
questions?
question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Heather, I'm looking at the red flag report,
Yes.
and I am very happy to see our days of cash on hand have gone up so much. It looks like our ed fund is holding on to another 1.5 million above what we've historically had in January. Can you just speak to why we have that increase?
I have to look directly at the expenses to see, because we're at the same percentage, so I have to look and see if it has to do with salary increases or some other like normal payment that we're making. Because everything I'm looking at, we're right on target. But I can look that up for you and I'll send it to the board.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes. Probably the only fund that I'm concerned about right now is operations and maintenance. And to be honest, it's not because of misspending at all. It's all nuts and bolts. It's just that we only have our property taxes going in it right now, and that is one of my goals eventually is to, I'm right now getting some information together to possibly tweak our risk management plan to start putting a portion of the head custodians into tort, which is allowable for safety, and eventually move some other revenue towards operations and maintenance too, because of our buildings. You know, we need to have the work done on our buildings for us to be able to operate efficiently.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Christine?
Good evening. Good to see you all. It's like it's been a while, although I watch you through the little eye on the wall. You probably don't get to see me very much, but just a couple of things to highlight in my report tonight. One, the first presentation, the first little bit we're going to talk about is something that we have been discussing for well over a year, and like many other things, COVID kind of put a halt to that. But Rhonda Erickey and I have been working on a plan for the use of therapy dogs in the district, and got that kind of squared away, and Rhonda's going to talk a little bit to you guys about that tonight. And then following that, we're going to report on some special education data as well. So I'm going to go ahead and let Rhonda and Jordan take the show.
Jordan's like, I'm ready for my show.
She is. All right, so you hear a lot of terms. You hear service dog, emotional support dog, therapy dog. What a therapy dog is that's someone where the owner and the dog go places, and like schools, libraries, hospitals, court, retirement homes, nursing homes, that kind of thing. And you go for a visit. So it's an organized visit where you've been approved. You go in and you're sharing your dog with someone who maybe needs a little cheering up or a little support during their time. How it's different is, again, it's just about affection, comfort, support, joy, happiness. Just making someone's day just a little bit brighter. And therapy dogs are tested. We go through a program. She actually started with being a canine. She got her canine good citizenship. And then you go through a therapy dog class, you go through testing, you sign up with the national organization, you get licensed, you're insured. And because I work here and she would come to this school, there's like another level of insurance on top of that, when it's your own place of work. And part of the, therapy dog visit is we stay together. My job is to be totally focused on her and how she's interacting with whomever she's interacting with. You hold the leash during the time, and it just is designed to make people happier. How that differs from a service dog is a service dog is allowed to go anywhere. That's a dog that's been specifically trained to help someone with a disability. So it's not exactly the same thing, but they both go through trainings, they both have insurance. An emotional support dog, that's someone's own dog. And they get to bring, emotional support dogs don't get to go everywhere because that's just that own person's dog that they're going with them to make them comfortable. They're not sharing it with someone else. And they aren't allowed to go necessarily everywhere. It's kind of up to the place of business if the emotional support dog is going. And why a therapy dog? Why does Mahomet-Seymour Schools need a therapy dog? You can do a Google search and you're going to see all the physical and mental benefits of pet therapy, specifically dogs, but really any pet therapy. But I've been on both sides of it, and my first experience with a therapy dog was when my mom was dying, and that spanned several years. And you know, holidays, and you go to the hospital, and like, oh, again, it's you know, and you go in. And I remember the first therapy dog I came across was my brothers and I were walking through the hospital. We turned the corner, and there was this ridiculously hilarious looking dog, huge Santa hat sticking up, bells, bracelets, dressed to the nines, and it changed everything. It made our day. The lady brought the dog down to see my mom and my dad, and it's like the only thing I remember from that Christmas. It was the only thing really, you know, good about that Christmas. And then, so after that, I started taking dogs in, and I'm taking them to, she's gone into a lot of hospitals, a lot of nursing homes, and my other dog too, and it's like a wheelchair traffic jam of people trying to get to the dog. It brightens their day, it makes people smile. She's been to school, and just no matter how bad of a day kids are having, like they brighten up when they see the dog. It's like, dog's here, and they run and they want to see the dog. And that's why. I mean, you know, we wanted to roll this out even before we knew what COVID was, and now more than ever, I think it's especially helpful. So how this looks at Mahomet-Seymour Schools, I mean, you know, we're still under COVID restrictions, so right now it's more of a single student or adult thing. I do bring her on Mondays for staff, and there are certain staff members that can't wait. They keep treats in their classroom, and they want her to come down, come to their room, and there's a girl that comes on Monday study halls, and she runs to my room every single, that's how she starts her day. She comes down to see Jordan. And, but eventually, you know, they can see groups of students, social workers, principals, anyone really that knows a student's having a rough day could call and request her right now. And students can read the dog. She did go to Lincoln Trails reading night last March, right before COVID hit. And we have had parents show, you know, request support at meetings before. And so now that we have these protocols in place and that we have specific dogs, if a parent requests for a meeting, we can bring a dog in. And, you know, even to something as simple as a Monday morning or Friday afternoon, you know, kind of after the COVID stuff, sitting at the entrance as kids come in or leave and brighten the day just a little bit. Oh, and during final exams. I am in high school, so it's a little stressful. We do have a district protocol in place that delineates all the rules. It was taken from the Alliance of Therapy Dogs. And the dog's handler, like in this case myself, you provide your own insurance. And we have developed forms for the administrators, because still not every dog can be a therapy dog. Like when she went through class, of the 10 or 12 people that were in the class, like 4 dogs didn't even make it through the class. And even with that said, she's particularly good with all ages, but not all dogs are. So each building administrator still has the right to say that this dog's a good fit for my building or not. And so, and then ideally, you know, maybe, I haven't asked, but maybe during registration, we could have permission slips, and the parents could just say right then, like, yes, my student can have dog visits, no, I'd rather not, or my student is allergic. So, you know, that way if it was just like on Skybird, then teachers would know right away. And we have a Google request form for people. So these are just some of the visits she's made. And that was our ugly sweater contest in the high school. So, does anybody have any questions?
Just a thought, would you mind coming up front so the people at a distance could see that beautiful dog?
Sure.
Jared, we have cameras in the right place?
Yeah.
She's right.
So while you guys are admiring Jordan, I just want to say that the district has had the opportunity to have therapy dogs come into the district for all kinds of reasons. And after having that experience several times, going on several college campuses where they're bringing in therapy dogs, that's sort of what prompted us to say, why don't we do this more with more kids more often? We've got some data on very individual students whose academic engagement and performance has significantly increased as their opportunities to see the dogs have increased. So that's a positive thing. I think the other thing is that Rhonda and I did not realize, but so we both belong to the same therapy dog group that gets called out to different places. Champaign School District has called and asked for our group's dogs to come into their buildings. And what I think is really great is that we have people in this district who are willing to go through the training and the dedication. It's daily work. It's not just something that the dog passes and then you forget about it. It's daily work with that dog that you have to do. And we have people in the district willing to do that, maintain those dogs, and bring those dogs in for other people to access. We've had nothing but positive results thus far. So I'm really excited to be able to have Jordan come in and do that. And her little brother, who's at home pouting right now. Harlow, who has a regular full-time gig, but she has made some public appearances. And Hattie, who got stopped due to COVID last year, but is set to start tomorrow night for her therapy dog training. So really excited about that.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Now, not probably quite as cute to talk about, but something that needs to be addressed. So every January, or usually in January, the ISBE Board of Education puts out the special education data based off of the December 1st child count. And so we, every year, take a look at that data and use it to drive some of the decisions that we make. And use it to inform us in terms of, do we need to go back and look at criteria and eligibility? Do we need to look at staffing based on the number of students? What kinds of professional development do we need based on the number of kids that we have? Are we over-identifying or under-identifying a particular group of students? And if so, is there a logical reason for that or not? And while we're looking at that, the state is monitoring those things all the time. They're called LEA determinations. And so right now we meet in all the LEA determinations that they review based on our special education data. We'll get more updated information on that in the spring. But we're kind of bringing you this data in two parts, one part tonight and one part in March. So tonight, Marissa's going to talk to you a little bit about data that's just specific to Mahomet-Seymour. And in March, we'll talk to you about Mahomet-Seymour's data as it compares to several other districts of similar size, makeup, demographics. Okay? Go ahead.
Thank you. So if you reviewed some of the data in the board packet, I did try to highlight some specific things for you to look at. So one thing to note is that we are identifying about 10% more students with speech and language impairments than the state average. But we're also about 9% lower in identifying students with developmental delays than the state average. So, and thinking about that, I really tried to be reflective and dig a little deeper. And I think a lot of that comes back to our preschool screening processes. So when we bring kids in, children ages 3 and 4, and we screen them for preschool using the DAO-4, sometimes students come out on that assessment as being an overall potential for delay. In many districts, when a child has that score, the school psychologist grabs that file and they go immediately to a IEP evaluation, and they look to give that child an IEP for developmental delay. That kind of goes against what I think Christine started and what I've tried to carry through as far as our philosophy on how to best work with children and families. And so what we tend to do is we bring those kiddos in, we get them in preschool, and we get them going, and we just see how they're going to do. preschool is an intervention. And so we wait till they're in here, 10, 12 weeks, and then kind of touch base again. Some of you may know this and some of you may not, but within our preschool programs, all of our different specialists touch base once or twice a month, sometimes every week, in our preschool programs. And so speech teachers are regularly visiting those classrooms. The occupational therapist is touching it in those classrooms. Social work. And if something is still looking like there may be something amiss and something we need to help, then we might look at going back to an evaluation with those children. And often, what we find is the kids who do score with an overall potential for delay on the screening, truly they have a significant speech impairment. And so, to kind of further support that data, I went back and looked in the last 2 years that I've been in this role at our screening results. And so in the last 2 years to date, we have screening tomorrow, so this will be continually changing. We have identified 25 children as having an overall potential for delay. Of those, 2 students have or under evaluation for IEP for a developmental delay. So we're seeing delays across more than one area. 10 have or under evaluation for a speech and language disability, so almost half. And 2 of them have or are under evaluation for another disability category. So there may be something medical, something else that we see going on there. So I think that kind of explains maybe some disparity in why our data doesn't look like the state's. The other area that I think should be highlighted is the number of students that we have with specific learning disabilities. We are below the state average, not significantly, but we are still below it. And I think that that has to do with the strength and fidelity of our MTSS program. Over the last decade and a half, the legislation on multi-tiered systems of support or response to intervention has swayed back and forth between recommending its use by using the term may or requiring its use by using the term shall. Regardless of the way the pendulum has swung, our district has still held steady in believing that intervention is a tool that we want to continue to hold within our system of supports for our students. Not all districts have done the same. So we do believe that it is best to try to intervene with students before we would go to giving them an IEP label. And then, some of the disability categories are arguable, intellectual disabilities and deafness and things like that are things that we're not specifically identifying through any specific process that's different for our district than other districts across the state. As far as children age, you might notice that children with speech and language impairments, that number significantly declines as kids continue to age, and that's because they get the intervention they need, and then they tend to not need that anymore. On the contrary, as children age, we tend to have more students with specific learning disabilities. So as the rigor of the curriculum increases and they're not able to keep up, that sometimes is the route that we end up going. And then lastly, the last thing I want to point out from the data is I think it's really important to recognize the efforts of all of our staff who work really diligently to educate the highest percentage of our students as possible within the LRE of the general education classroom. It's very important for students with high incidence disabilities to have access to the Tier 1 instruction, but it's just as important for students with a variety of other disabilities to be included in the general education setting as much as possible, for not only academic, but also social and emotional growth. This is definitely an area where our district excels. And so if you don't have the data in front of you, Mahomet-Seymour has 74% of all students with IEP eligibility labels being educated in the general education classroom, 8% or more of their school day. On the contrary, it's 49% for the state of Illinois as a whole. So we have a lot of great things happening.
You're talking about inclusion and equity. Individuals with disabilities are certainly included in that. Sometimes they get overlooked in that, especially in current conversation. But I feel like if you're talking about inclusion and equity, certainly our students in the district have every opportunity for inclusion, and that's something we're really proud of. So, questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Romo.
I have nothing to add, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions on Dr. Romo's report? It was submitted.
I just want to say thank you. I did the Saturday seminar that for Castle, and I really thought, I loved that she had the PowerPoints and slides, but it was information that I could use in my personal and professional life as well. And, people don't miss the opportunities. It was 48 minutes of time and a great deal of fantastic information that gives you different strategies and things to think about. It's not only applicable all the time for social emotional learning, but especially during COVID. So thank you.
Thanks, and that recording is posted to the district website.
Great.
We'll let instead.
Nicole, one question I had was, and I don't remember if it was in this packet or in one of our emails about catching up students, that there was like a 2 or 3 year process that we were going through.
Yes, so we're in the process of trying to finalize that, and so I'm working with the administrators right now and our instructional coaches, and we're making some tweaks to that. And then next month, we've got plans to share with district leadership team and building leadership teams to provide them some information. So I should have more for you, if not next meeting, by April, to be able to explain that. Mm-hmm.
I guess my concern is, what about those kids that only have 1 or 2 years left? What's our focus? You know, how are we going to catch them back up if we're taking a longer term look at some of these other younger age groups?
So this goes all the way through high school, the process that we're going to use.
Okay.
And it starts, but I need to provide some time and some opportunity to train teachers and to work with them on these best practices. And that they'll start next school year. Okay. But I haven't had a chance to talk to teachers about it, and I really would prefer to get their feedback before we roll that out.
Sure. How about the summer session? Do we have any idea of how busy that's going to be with some of students trying to catch up during the summer sessions that we have?
So right now we're catching kids up with micro courses. So I think we're just finishing up, or in the process of finishing up our first micro session. So getting some kids caught up on course credit, and we'll have 2 more sessions there. And then summer school will be the next. So summer school, our priority in enrolling kids will be kids that need to do credit recovery, and trying to get students caught up there. We've been working with the counselors at the high school and teachers to do that. I will say too, I think coming into second semester, for example, the junior high has had a lot of luck really focusing on work completion, offering those opportunities, making personal phone calls and connections to families, and getting kids in and getting work assignments caught up and working to get kids back on track now.
How are we assessing the learning that's going on with this catch-up process? You know, is there a way to compare it to previous years at that grade level that didn't have to go through COVID, obviously? You know, is there an assessment process? You know, I know we're trying to catch up, but there's catching up to be catching up, and there's actual learning that's going on that's needed for them to take the next step in their education. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
so that's part of what will be, yes. So I will say, like, if we're just going to be honest, the work that you're doing in a micro course when you're 4 weeks is not the same work that you did all of first semester, focusing on priority learning there and the skills that kids need for that next level or that next course is kind of the priority that we focus on there. When we go into next year, we're going to be talking about what they call kind of just-in-time supports. So really identifying what the prerequisites are that kids need in order to be successful with that content that's coming up, and providing that intervention support as they approach that unit or skill, so that kids, the whole goal starting is that we are not jumping off of grade level. We're going to stick with grade level rigor and content, and focusing on continuing to go deep, even if that means that there are certain pieces that we have to pull.
do we have any idea where our younger age groups and how they're doing with their reading compared to previous years?
Yeah, I think if you look at Ryan's report, that we're struggling with the foundational skills. And that is one area. So like when we talk about just-in-time supports, like at the high school, junior high, even later elementary, you can look at a progression of skill and see where a student is missing that prerequisite to access that current knowledge or content. With what we call the foundational skills that are primarily taught in grades K through 2, we cannot do that. That is going to take a big discussion with those teams of teachers to identify specifically where kids are
And kids have to be taught those lessons are skills in a sequential order. That's how those skills are acquired. But we cannot do that just with interventionists. I mean, it's going to take work with our core curriculum in the classroom and that's what I'm saying. Like, we want to continue in some areas, like with math, you want to continue with your grade level content, but K2 is just a little bit different because those foundational skills build on each other, and we've got to go sequentially.
I just want to make, and thank you, I just want to make sure that, I mean, that we're providing the educational service to our taxpayers, even though we're going through this COVID process, that we're meeting, not just meeting, but exceeding expectations. And this is a tough process here, but it just, we've got a lot of work to do.
Yes,
So I think we've got to keep our eye on the ball with all of that.
absolutely, absolutely. We'll have more to report once we get this plan together, and we want to have the opportunity to hear from our teachers about it. And I appreciate the questions, and I think all school districts are faced with this issue of addressing unfinished learning and how we're going to move ahead. So I feel like we have a really good plan that we're working on, and we'll bring everybody up to speed.
I just encourage, as a education professional for 23 years, parents to continue to stay engaged. I work in a district, not this district, but I've been very surprised. We've had 2 sets of parent conferences already, and we've had very low participation, and that has not ever been my experience ever. Fall is slammed, and spring is, oh my gosh, what are we going to do because the school year is almost over. And in talking with the 9 different districts that I work with, that seems to be kind of the word on the street, and that concerns me because it takes everybody to make it be successful. So I just, for anybody who's paying attention to that, please stay engaged. We can't afford to get through this pandemic without everybody being engaged.
Okay, any other questions for Dr. Rummel? Dr. Hall?
Just
Thanks,
very,
Dr. Rummel.
very
Sorry.
quickly, just a quick community engagement update. Our next meeting of the facilitating team is this Thursday evening from 6:30 to 8:30. Our co-chairs of this team, pretty much a powerhouse of people here: Jay McGrow-Lucian, Audie Puckett, Jim Risley, and Jennifer Soderlund. Just very pleased that they were willing to take on the leadership of this group. And through a creative, really great brainstorming process, we came up with the name Bulldog Blueprint as kind of the brand or the tagline or logo for this community engagement initiative. So moving ahead with that, and it's going very well. Thank you.
Any questions on anything that Dr. Hall had in her written oral report? Okay, we're into new business, and item number 1, Heather, the contract with Clifton Larson Allen.
Yes, Clifton Larson Allen has been good to us when it comes to contracts for the last few years. They kept the flat rate, I guess, the last 2 years, and this year, even with the additional reporting required, they are asking for a 1,000 overall increase to all fees for 2021 audit, and then another 700 for the following year, trying to get as much discount as we can by doing, approving a 2-year quotes. So I would just, my recommendation would be to approve this and proceed with them starting the audit, which they will be starting very soon. They do a very detailed analysis of our books.
Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve Clifton Larson Allen LLP as the auditor for the district for the next 2 fiscal years. And the board approves the contract and authorizes the superintendent to execute the professional services agreement. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion on that contract? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Giles,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes?
McComb.
Yes. Item number 2, Parkland dual credit fees. Dr. Rummel.
So I'm bringing this back this month. I did receive some communication following last month's, that there was the idea that the Parkland classes would not be open to students who were unable to pay for their fees. And I would just like to clarify that the district will be covering the cost for families that are unable to pay the fees for the dual credit. But this is a new fee that is being passed on to the district by Parkland for classes that are taught by Mahomet-Seymour teachers at the high school in which students receive credit at the community college, in addition to their high school credit. So we currently offer 2 classes. We are hiring a chemistry teacher this year, so I don't know if we'll be able to offer the Chem 2 next year, if it'll just be physics. But Mr. Benedict and I, Mr. Flores, the counselor at the high school, have been meeting with Parkland, and we do have new classes that we'll be hoping to share with you next year for dual credit that will be on the schedule for the following year. So it's an area that Mr. Benedict is excited to begin offering.
Superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve passing along the Parkland dual credit fee to families for dual credit courses taught by Mahomet-Seymour staff at the Parkland Community College per student rate charged to the district, with the district covering the fees in full for free lunch or in part for reduced lunch for qualifying students. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion or questions?
Is there some new information, Nicole, that made it appropriate to bring this back to the board?
I would say I received some emails from people in the community saying that they did not believe that we should be charging families and students that could not afford to take the classes, and thus potentially pushing kids out of classes that they wanted to take. So I feel like I am clarifying that misinformation.
Aren't kids enrolling for classes though? Don't they kind of need to know if it's available for them to take or not too?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like the better information we have to give them, then they know.
Yes, and families need to know whether they're going to be paying for the course or not.
How are we going to judge whether or not a student or a family is, according to the district, able to pay the fee?
So we currently do that with Kids Club. Families that are on free lunch do not pay. Families on reduced lunch tend to pay a reduced fee. If a family contacts us because they're in a hardship, I'll be honest, I've never questioned the family's hardship. We cover the cost.
So will we cover the cost incomplete if they're on reduced lunch?
If the family says that they need that to be done, then that's what our past practice has been.
The other reason
We
to
will.
bring it back, go ahead.
No, I'm just really trying to clarify so I understand. What you're saying is that we will cover the fee for any family that says that they cannot pay.
That's what we have done in the past with other fees. For example, Kids Club.
We've also worked with families in various circumstances to come up with a payment plan. The goal here is not to exclude, the goal is to help. This is also being brought back because it was ended in a 3-3 vote in January, which I can't really say is a decision. And so this is students earning college credit, and we wanted to bring it back with some clarification and make sure that it was clear that fees will be waived for students who qualify for free or reduced lunch, and that we are also willing to assist families facing financial hardship.
And so
Nicole,
what would it have to do to receive that? I mean, I guess one of the things that's
Just need
difficult
to
for me.
communicate with families. That's all. We just need to communicate with families. Very simple.
Merle, do you have a question?
Nicole, confused, or my memory's failing me from last time we talked about some of this. I was thinking that these dual credit courses were actually taught by Parkland staff.
So,
Do we have two kinds of courses?
yeah, so you can have classes taught by Parkland staff, comes at a different rate. That has been covered from our Perkins grant in the past for the medical course that we currently offer. So because it's covered by a grant, we don't charge, that doesn't make sense to charge parents for something that we're paying for from a grant. This right here, where our teachers, our district teachers are teaching college course, is not something we have ever been charged for by Parkland in the past. This is a new fee they are passing on to us. So we're just asking that we pass that on to the families that are receiving the college credit for it.
Thank you. And to be clear, it's a smaller dollar amount than they would pay sticker price for that same credit if they were to wait a year or two and take it apart.
Yes.
I understand that we would like to have, recover some of the money that Parkland is charging us. I would like to suggest that perhaps instead of charging the fee and asking families to say if it's a hardship, that maybe we could enroll the students, and when students are enrolled, we tell the families, this is a great opportunity, you're getting college credit, they charge the district. We would like any family who is able to give a suggested donation of whatever the fee is, so that students wouldn't not sign up or not ask, because as I talk to people in the community that struggle financially, a lot of them indicate that they're too embarrassed to come and ask, that they don't want to come and say, I'm struggling and I need help. And what I'm afraid of is that instead those kids would just not take the class so that they didn't have to face that fact. But if we would flip it around, we would still be collecting the money, but yet we wouldn't be excluding students.
I like that idea, Colleen. I think that takes away some of the discomfort that people feel when they have to come and let someone else know that they're struggling. And I think it casts the widest net available for students being able to participate in these high-level classes. And I think that this community, one of the things that I've seen time and time again is that those who can show up big. And so I don't believe we would have an issue with people who are able to make that donation doing that. I've just seen the generosity of this community time and time again. So I believe that people would make that donation when they were able to, and it would remove that uncomfortable feeling for some families who might not feel comfortable having that level of discussion.
I think we ought to leave the mechanism up to the administration to figure out how to manage through that. I don't know whether they pay electronically, whether there's messaging in there that could be done, or whether they pay in other ways, but I think there's a host of ways to say a number of things.
I agree that we should certainly allow the mechanism to be up to the administrators. It's not our role to decide how they would collect the money with electronic or whatever. But I guess I'm suggesting that we would not charge it as a fee, but instead ask for a suggested donation. So it's the broad category of what we're doing, to make sure that we have as many students as possible able to participate.
So I will say that's the thing I keep coming back to is my big fear is that we will disincentivize students with this fee. I think that there are a lot of students who have families that don't meet the requirement for the free lunch program because it's a pretty low requirement, but there's still people that $100 and some dollars is a lot of money. And especially at the start of the year, when you've got all these other registration fees and book fees that they also are not qualified to have waived. I think there's a real need there. There's kind of like a donut hole between people who have the resources to pay these and not basically not sweat it, and people that are covered by these free lunch programs. So I kind of like the idea of flipping it on its head and making it an optional donation. That's an interesting compromise. I like that.
I think the language of donation versus fee is just possibly misguided because no one's going to go to Parkland and enroll with a donation.
Right.
It's always fees and tuition as we get into that state. I don't know why we would want to call it. You get to do this, get Parkland credit for a donation. I think there is a better way. Call it what it is. It is a fee. If you can pay it, please do. If not, let us know.
Well, if you wait and take the class at Parkland, you'll pay a higher fee.
Right.
I think the difference though, guys, is as a K-12 institution, we have a constitutional obligation to provide a free public education. And that is not the case for,
Not for college credit, though.
No, not for college
that is not
credit.
the case for, well, if there's some way we can separate the college credit out and still let them take the class.
They can take a physics class without taking the Parkland physics, correct?
Right.
We offer 2 other physics
There are
classes.
2 other physics classes.
But to
And do
say
they cover the same material?
The AP course covers different material, but they still have the option to earn college credit with the AP if they pass the exam.
And see, that's an interesting contrast there. The AP exam, the students have the ability to take the course, but not pay the extra for the test if they can't afford it. And so they're not disincentivized by the AP course. But it sounds like the material and the sequence provided by these Parkland dual credit classes are not matched somewhere else in our curriculum.
So I do believe, Ken, that students who are, so the change that was made a couple of years ago, kids who are not eligible for the dual credit course, meaning they don't meet the acceptance criteria for Parkland, can no longer sit in a dual credit class. So if we offer a dual credit class, everybody in that class must be eligible for the class. What I don't know is if everybody has to be taking it for dual credit. And that's just something that I honestly do not know the answer to.
As a contrast, what's the fee for taking the AP exam?
Yeah, I want to say it's like 95, 94.
495, and what's the fee?
Okay.
So
this
depends on the Parkland class. It could be
Right.
like in the 50s to the, to like 137. But the difference is with the Parkland class, it's guaranteed credit. You pass the course, you get the college credit. With the AP exam, you take the class, and then you have to wait till you take the exam. And then, for example, if you're going to try to transfer that Parkland class or that AP class to Parkland, if you get a 5, you could use it for this class or this class. If you get a 4, you can use it for this class or this class. And if you get a 3, sometimes you can use it towards an elective. And so you find that with the AP courses, depends on what university or college you go to and what your score is as to what that transfers towards a credit.
So if I'm hearing you right, we've got classes for no fees. normal K-12 education. We have classes with a fee for an AP exam, and we have a class for dual credit that has a fee.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you don't have to pay the fee for the AP,
You pay the fee for the AP exam.
If you take the
but you
exam.
could take the class without the fee.
But you don't get the college
You don't
credit.
get the credit.
Don't get the college credit. See, I agree, we've
But
got a right, we've got a duty to provide a K-12 education. But we don't have a duty to provide a Parkland education.
Right.
That's the difference.
I think this is
And if
clear.
they want the Parkland
But
Parkland credits, they pay the reduced bargain Parkland price.
And we give all the students 3 logical choices.
Or the next year, they can go to Parkland and pay the regular rate, or they can go to some other university or pay the regular rate, or they can go to no university if they want to. That becomes their choice.
I can also find out if they can take the dual credit class and not take it for dual credit. Meaning they would be able to sit in the class, but they would not be issued Parkland credit for the class if they're eligible to sit the class. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I can look into that.
I think that would be wonderful, Nicole.
I'd be happy to do that.
so,
Thank you. That'd be great.
so
I think
my suggestion before was to find a way to have the district perhaps collect some of the fees, but we do have another option, which is we did not attend the Triple I conference this year, and that in our budget is a $10,000 to $15,000 expense, and so that would cover 2 years of this class. So if we were to dedicate the money that typically goes to the Triple I conference to this class, we could cover this for the next 2 years and then revisit this when we discuss fees.
Well, I suggest we use the money to pay for special ed teachers, so.
Yeah.
Right,
Which we don't have.
I had to attend. I think the education is the key, and that's the business we're in, because we're coming up now and we're talking about disparity, which I did stand up at one of the town halls and talk about that being a very important ism that we don't recognize enough. And we're talking about disparity in these classes, and then we have previously talked about disparity in athletics, but then when we talk to people, they're like, well, if people let me know, I can take care of that. You can only help someone if you know they need help. Now, everybody has their profession, but I'm a social worker, and we say asking for help is a sign of strength. And so we're not mind readers. We need to know that. So we need to be very clear about what we do and what we offer and how to go about getting it. But we can't force someone to do something that they don't want to do now or ever.
I think we're very adequately prepared to pass on a fee. It's not our duty to subsidize what goes on at the college level. And we have educational options. 4, it sounds like we have. I think it's out of our scope of education. And call a spade a spade. A fee is a fee.
And you're still providing faith with that because the public education is in this setting. It doesn't have to be in the collegiate setting.
And you still have the option for
Right.
non-payment.
And we are going to make accommodations. So it's very fair, in my opinion.
All right, does anyone have anything new to add to the discussion?
Yes. I move to amend the motion to say, with the district covering fees in full for any student who cannot pay. And eliminate the free lunch, reduced lunch. Because if that's what we're saying, then that's what we should pass.
Can you repeat what you
Second
said,
that so we
Colin?
can have discussion.
So you want to get rid of the free lunch and reduced lunch qualifying and just say we cover any student who can't pay?
Correct. The district would cover the fees in full for any student who cannot pay.
That's been motioned and seconded.
you want to do that instead of waiting to find out if a student can sit the class without paying for the fee?
Yes, I would like to, because we've just had a discussion for a long time, and we've said that the district will cover for any student who cannot pay. And so if that's what we're saying, we should put that into our motion.
Heather or whoever, can we word it that way, or is there an issue with that?
I don't know, I mean, as talking about, the district finances and everything, I think we need to see what that impact is. And what that would be on a yearly basis. Unfortunately, we can't take something.
I'm just talking about the legality of wording it that way. Because I know typically we tie things to free reduced lunch.
Well,
Yes.
that's also just a definite criteria that exists and that we track on those students and those fees are automatically waived. And so that's why that language is.
Right, then those people don't have to come and ask, that's automatically.
No, exactly.
But- So then,
Right.
if we don't do it that way, then those people do have to come and ask.
Right,
Everybody.
exactly.
But you would know that any student on free and reduced lunch was a student who couldn't pay. So they could still be automatically withdrawn. It didn't say they have to contact you or don't have to contact you. It just says any student who can't pay, the district would pay for. That's what we've been saying all along here.
Yeah,
I
that
just
sounds like
feel
an
like that,
implementation detail.
we've got some definite criteria that we've gone by. And if we can trust our administrators to work out with families that are unable to pay, that it's a workable solution. It's kind of like making this overly complex when it could be very simple.
We already have the exception to handle those who cannot pay in practice anyway. I don't want to give up the policy that says we'll do it automatically for those who are on the free and reduced lunch. I wouldn't want to give that up.
Okay.
I just don't think that there's a need to twist ourselves in knots when we have something that's very workable.
Okay, well, we've got the motion and second on the floor for the second version of the motion.
Okay.
So we need to vote. Is there any more questions on the amendment to the motion? Or discussion on the amendment to the motion?
I'm happy to make an additional amendment to the motion after this that says the district will cover the fees in full, free lunch, or in part reduced lunch, or for qualifying students or any other students who are unable to pay. So that we can keep that wording in there and just add what we're saying we'll do.
I really would prefer not to have another amendment right now. We've got one amendment on the floor. Can we vote on the amendment, please? This is on the amendment.
Hennessy,
Yes?
Schultz,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
Giles,
No.
Hendricks,
No.
Larson. No. McComb.
No. All right, now we're back to the original motion.
Okay, so I'll amend it again to say that we'll pay fees in full or in part for qualifying students or any student unable to pay.
I'll second that.
I just don't understand. If we're saying that's what we're willing to do, I don't understand why we wouldn't be willing to put it in our motion. It gives me pause as to why we wouldn't want to make our motion what we say we want to do.
Well, say that motion again. What's the, can we reread
We're
that?
changing it to read, with the district covering fees in full for free lunch or in part for reduced lunch for qualifying students or for anyone who cannot pay.
For any student who cannot pay.
Who is unable to pay.
Unable to pay. So we're taking the motion and adding. Able to pay.
I don't have any problem with that. It's essentially doing what we say we're gonna do, so.
I would agree. What we said we're gonna do. Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, so we're voting on the amendment as written, or the motion as written, except adding,
Voting to amend the motion.
the amendment, which is we'll pay for students who can't pay, or for whatever reason can't pay.
Fees will be waived for students who qualify for free or reduced lunch, or those students who are unable to pay. Is that right, Colleen?
Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, roll call vote.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes. Okay.
Now you have to vote on the.
So we voted on the amendment, now we have to vote on the
Yep.
amended motion.
Okay, so now we voted the amendment in, so now we're voting on the amended motion combined, because we still have that motion on the table.
Larson,
Yes.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes, next item, adaptive pause from in-person learning the week of March 22nd and 26th. I believe that is the week after, spring break. And Ms. Hennessy was suggesting that we go remote that week.
It's actually not correct, just in a point of clarification. I actually just, what I wanted was for this board to have a discussion centered around spring break and the travel policy that we have under the COVID world that we're currently living in. I'm kind of frustrated because I believe the role of the board is to protect the community, and that the best way that we do that as a board is to have these types of discussions in public so that we could talk about the challenges that we face and the policies that we enact. And I believe that it's important that we enact policies that we intend to actually follow through on. But the superintendent has already made a recommendation based on the email agenda item that I requested for discussion. And before a word has taken place or any discussion has been had by this board, she's recommending that we don't do that. There was no recommendation. I wanted to have a thoughtful discussion with this board about the very real scenario of people going on vacation and the fact that we have policies in place surrounding what people have to do when they travel, when they get back, and the impact that will have on the district. But the recommendation from the superintendent is no. So I'm not sure where to go on with this tonight.
Recommendation of the superintendent is she doesn't believe we need the adaptive pause. That doesn't mean we can't discuss it.
I didn't recommend, I wanted to talk about.
Let's do that.
Well, we're here.
What was our practice after Thanksgiving and after the winter holidays? What, is spring break any different?
We have a policy about what people are supposed to do when they travel and when they get back. And if we are going to enforce that policy, there will be a significant number of students and I believe staff who will have mandatory quarantine periods upon their return from spring break. So I wanted to have a discussion about what learning was going to look like in the district at all levels, knowing that there could be a significant number of students and staff who will not be able to be in the building.
What is that policy?
I think Nita can speak to that.
I have the policy right here. The policy from the IDPH says that you need to be tested 3 to 5 days after travel and stay home for 7 days after travel. Even if you test negative, stay home the full 7 days. If you test positive, isolate yourself to protect others from getting infected. If you don't get tested, the safest stay home is 10 days after travel.
So we approved that recommendation from IDPH?
This is what Dr. Hall sent out as the travel and quarantine guideline updates to the parents in the district.
It's a guideline.
It's a
So-
guideline.
Okay.
Can we allow our district nurse to speak to this
Nita.
issue, please?
Fill us in here.
Well, first of all, it's a guideline, not a policy. And we have followed the same guideline since since the fall. And right now, what we're doing, they have edited it some from day 1 after you travel, and then again, day 5. Now they're saying 3 to 5 days after travel that you should be tested. We've been doing that. The other thing that we are doing to also augment the safety of our community is we are offering a drive-through testing Thursday evening before spring break. And then again, on Monday, as we have been every single Monday after spring break. So honestly, it's a case-by-case basis. I talk to a lot of families and they tell me what their plans are, and then we make recommendations and go from there. If somebody is isolating in a cabin on their own with their family doing absolutely nothing, then that's very different than somebody going in a very crowded place and doing unsafe things, taking their masks off, just doing whatever they want to do in a high risk area. And so every case is a little bit different, and quite honestly, their guidelines, we can't enforce all that because we can't be the traffic police, because I promise you that we have a lot of families who just don't tell us. They just go, they come back, they come to school, we never know until a student or somebody says, oh, by the way, we went to Timbuktu. And, and then we find out maybe later if they test positive. We can't know that because we don't know what every family in the district is doing. We are offering testing regularly every single week. We continue to catch people who are positive through that testing every single week. We're offering testing multiple times during the week for families who may be traveling, or for those who do call us, we offer testing. If somebody does a high-risk activity, then I do recommend that they test when they get back and that they wait for that second negative test before they come back to school. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Unfortunately, I wish that this were all a straight line, black and white, every single answer. I have yet to find one of those since March 12th of last year.
But we have a policy in place that says that this.
It's a guideline. It is not a policy.
We passed a set of guidelines as policy.
It doesn't turn a guideline into a policy. It says we've got guidelines.
Okay, sometimes we follow guidelines, sometimes we don't follow guidelines. I was just looking for a consistent message about what we were going to do post spring break, but I don't see any actual interest in discussing that. So I'm fine with removing this item.
I thought we did just discuss it. Nita, if I'm hearing you right, our guidelines have been in place for some time, and those same guidelines would be adequate for spring break.
Right, that hasn't changed, and we edited some of those things recently based on the 3 to 5 days that the IDPH says. They changed.
Okay.
I get updates a couple times a month. As we get them, we try to put them out to let people know that things have edited or changed or relaxed or whatever that case may be. Again, it's all fluid. There's nothing that you can say today that may not be true in 2 weeks. It may all change again in 2 weeks. We don't know that. But spring break is not going to be any different than what we experienced over Christmas or Thanksgiving, except that things are looking a little better. So there's a glimmer of hope that things are moving in the right direction and continue to move in the right direction. So what we are doing is we're doing the best we can within our buildings to ensure that we're continuing to do the mitigation factors that need to stay in place so that we identify students or staff ahead of time who may be positive or have been exposed. In addition, we have a lot of staff members who are about to receive their second vaccine, I've heard, so that's helping. We have a lot of people in the community who are being vaccinated. That's helping. Our students can't do that. And so the other thing that we're doing is that we are, as I said, to offer to parents, and I've spoken to several parents who asked about this, we have decided on our own to offer a Thursday evening drive-through testing for people who want to test before they go on break. We know they're traveling, they'll be back the weekend, so they will test that third day after they get back, and then we'll go from there.
So we're going above and beyond our even previous guidelines.
Which is what we've done the whole
We're
time.
going above and beyond by offering testing.
Yeah.
I think it's important to remind everybody that the screening that we're doing actually only has a 32% accuracy rate on non-symptomatic patients.
That's your opinion. That's not a fact.
It's not my opinion. It's actually the published information about the screening that we're doing.
No, it's not. What's published about this particular screening is that it has about a 95% sensitivity. I also received, and was verified through a webinar with IDPH just recently, that we no longer need to do an additional PCR testing if we identify a positive or if somebody's asymptomatic. The Binax Now rapid antigen test is being used statewide, and it now is being accepted. Whatever the results of that test are is what's being accepted as the results of that test. We no longer have to confirm with the PCR test whether it's negative or positive if the person is symptomatic. And that is a change. So what I heard on the webinar just this past week is the Binax Now is proving very effective. And we are literally, we have not had one single testing time that we haven't caught at least one, if not more, people who are positive. And in a lot of those cases, we've ended up quarantining people before they came to school on Tuesday. I don't anticipate spring break being any different than Super Bowl was or Christmas break. And probably less, because right now the numbers are going in the right direction.
Max, can we move on from this?
I'm fine with moving on if that's what you want to do.
Do we need to vote or no?
I don't know if we need to vote or not. Shelley, if we just want to not bring it to the table, do we just not bring it to the table?
Megan just said she.
Correct, right, you don't need to have a vote on
Megan
it.
said
There's
she's
not-
good with not bringing it forward.
There's not a motion made, you can just move on from it.
Okay, there's no motion made, we can move on. Item 4, COVID-19 update.
Anything else?
I don't have anything.
Is there anything else under COVID we've not talked about? Okay. This time a closed session is necessary for the collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Is there a motion to go in closed session for that reason at this time?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on closed session? Roll call vote, please.
Steve?
Yes,
Keith?
yes, yes.
Larson?
Yes.
Hennessy?
Yes.
Hendricks?
Yes.
Schultz?
Yes.
Giles?
Yes.
McComb?
Yes, board members and Shelley, you'll log off this link, you'll log on to the closed session link. We'll reconvene in about 10 minutes at straight up 9 o'clock. Folks who've been with us tonight on YouTube, we thank you for being here. We do not anticipate any business at the end of closed session. Thanks for being with us, everybody. Have a great evening.